Hello, Classic Crew, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about 6 ways to talk to liberals. I recently read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. I've been talking about it a lot on my Twitter and on Instagram, and I just recently finished it. So, the book is talking about the moral psychology underlying left and right on the spectrum of American politics, and how by understanding the differences in approach by the two sides as regards morality, we can actually understand people better as individuals. Now, there were things about this book that I didn't love because Jonathan Haidt is a liberal and he was writing this book for liberals so that they could try and understand conservatives. But in doing so, he ended up being a little bit condescending to conservatives and sort of stereotyping our morals and our values. But there were also some really valuable lessons in the book that I think were worth talking about and will allow us to view people on the other side of the aisle as people and not as enemies. And I think that that's just a really hard thing in American politics today, is that really often across the aisle we view each other not as humans, but just as someone who disagrees with me. We see them as their politics, and people are so much more than that. So even though conservatives and liberals disagree on a lot, we are all people and it's worth trying to understand the other side. Now, before I get started, I want to get out of the way here and now the difference between leftists and wokeists on one hand and liberals on the other. Leftists live out their woke ideology as religion. Even though it doesn't kind of look like a typical religion, it is one. They want to tear down our existing moral structures and society and start over from the beginning. They believe that all of the things that we now accept, things that are common sense, things that define morality, define right and wrong, define our social structure, all of that was created during a time when there was too much anything, too much bias, racism, any ism, to have any value or legitimacy or moral authority. For the woke, for leftists, they believe that they are the only ones who know what true morality is and that we need to tear everything down and start over. Now think about that. From their words and actions, it is very clear that they believe they are smart enough to tear down everything that we have known and start it over with their woke ideology. And anything that is not their woke ideology is immoral, wrong, evil, bad. We need to get rid of it and start from scratch using their version of morality. We can't really negotiate or have a fruitful conversation with leftists and wokeists because we're starting on entirely different footing. It honestly doesn't make any sense to engage in conversation with someone who doesn't have common ground with us, because they don't look at how can we make things better from here. They think we need to tear it down and start over. This is completely different from liberals who, like conservatives, are trying to do the best for everyone, but are still working within the same framework as we have about morality and social structures. Our disagreements with liberals can be significant, but very often they're more about practice than about principle. I believe that working with and talking to liberals can really create a fruitful conversation, and it's something that we should regularly and constantly pursue. And this is especially true because we need liberals on our side to fight against this wokist ideology, this leftist wokist ideology. Conservatives and liberals need to work together to stand against that kind of thinking. But now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt and 6 ways to talk to liberals. Number 1 is to make people feel understood before trying to change their mind. Jonathan Haidt uses the metaphor of a rider and an elephant to describe how people think. The rider is conscious, active reason and logic, and the elephant is intuition. It's unconscious impulses. We as people like to believe that the rider is fully in control, that everything that we believe and everything that we do is controlled by our logic and our reason and our conscious mind. But the fact of the matter is that's not really true, according to Jonathan Haidt. He says that the elephant is in control more often because think about how heavy an elephant is in comparison to a rider, and that the elephant will throw its weight around more than we think, such as a visceral reaction. When the elephant does take control, the rider's role is to justify what the elephant did. And he'll think that it was his own idea to do that, even if it's kind of after the fact. We often will have a gut reaction to things. We'll have a feeling and then end up explaining it and justifying it and reasoning for it afterward, we create a sophisticated reason for why we believe it rather than the other way around. It's not that we will have a logical thought and then our emotions follow. Usually our emotions will go first and then our reasoning will explain that emotion for us. Jonathan Haidt writes, therefore, if you want to change someone's mind about a moral or political issue, talk to the elephant first. You basically want to understand that the person you're talking to, you're actually talking to their elephant and not to their rider. You have to appeal to their emotions first before trying to appeal to their reason. So you want to be nice. You want to be kind. You want to show that you do understand their point of view and that you can work with that. You understand what they're saying. And then you can start to appeal to the rider. Because if you were immediately to just say, you're dumb and here's why, then no matter how well you convince the rider, the elephant still won't lean in your direction. And therefore, it won't matter that you've convinced them logically and you've given them reason after reason. Because intuition-wise, in their stomach, in their visceral reactions, they will not be able to agree with you. So you always want to make sure that when you're talking to someone on the other side of the aisle, you make sure they feel heard, they feel understood, that you are showing them that you have good intentions when you talk to them. Because if it just comes off like, I have to convince you no matter what, then they're not going to feel like they can accept that reasoning. That line of reasoning will not matter, and you will lose your opportunity to maybe change someone's mind. Number 2 is recognizing the thought process someone on the other side of the aisle is having when disagreeing with you. Jonathan Haidt writes, reasoning can take us to almost any conclusion we want to reach because we ask, can I believe it when we want to believe something, but must I believe it when we don't want to believe? This continues on with the idea of the rider and the elephant. The rider is often sent to find all of the information it needs to prove what the elephant wants him to prove, and then ignoring any other information. And the rider will again claim that it was his idea all along to think what he thinks, but really it was the elephant all along. We as humans have the capability to justify all of our feelings because we have both logic and intuition. So when the elephant feels something, the rider will go out and find what it needs to prove that. So if you're having a discussion with someone on the other side of the aisle and you are making logical arguments, you need to understand that they're probably asking themselves, must I believe this? Unless you have proven your point without a doubt and also made sure that the elephant feels comfortable changing gears, you won't have changed the other person's mind. So it's important to do both. Number 3 is that people in the West are weird. Let me explain what I'm talking about. So Jonathan Haidt writes, nearly all research in psychology is conducted on a very small subset of the human population, people from cultures that are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, which forms the acronym WEIRD. Weird people are statistical outliers. They are the least typical, least representative people you could study if you want to make generalizations about human nature. And another interesting point is that so often the people that are used in studies are college students who are even more atypical than the average person. If you think about yourself in college, if someone were to use you as an example, it would just not be really reflective of people generally, of people working in everyday life. So what Jonathan Haidt is talking about here is how people in the West and weird people are people who only look at morality on one dimension, which is harm and fairness. They don't think that morality contains any other dimensions. It's just harm and fairness. But most people from other parts of the world think that morality has many different spectrums. Western liberals analyze morality based on the individual alone and not in the context of communities or social obligations. Conservatives, though, they view morality as the sum of many parts. They see that there's more to morality than just harm and fairness. What this means for conservatives who have a more holistic view of morality is that we have to show liberals that the other parts of morality do fall under the umbrella of harm and fairness. Jonathan Haidt actually doesn't say this in his book, but I think it's really important, and I think it's something he almost missed in the book. He says that there are 6 foundations of morality. He says there's the care-harm foundation, the fairness-cheating foundation, loyalty-betrayal foundation, authority-subversion foundation, sanctity and degradation foundation, and the liberty-oppression foundation. I would argue that all of these principles of morality are actually also part of the care-harm foundation. And this is something that is super important to liberals because it's the only thing that they see is moral. That's the only part of morality that generally matters to them. So if that's the only one that matters to them, showing them how the 5 other principles of morality do actually deal with harm and fairness and deal with care and harm is something that can change the game when you're having a conversation with them. We just need to show that there is a deeper, broader, and more meaningful understanding of what care and harm actually means. And if you can present the other 5 principles of morality as also being about care and harm to a liberal that is weird, then you can actually change their mind because you would be speaking their language. Number 4 is that just because someone is born with a certain disposition, that doesn't make them predestined to be left-wing or right-wing. Their temperament could make them more predisposed, but it's not for sure. It's not guaranteed. And even if your elephant, it tends to lean one way or another, right? Is maybe more libertine or is maybe more strict. And your rider can easily justify that because that's what riders do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to end up being a liberal or a conservative. Honestly, people just aren't that simple and aren't that shallow. A good example is if you have actually been convinced of an idea that doesn't seem natural to your personality, you can successfully live a lifestyle that doesn't fit with who you are, in a sense. For example, if you're a more libertine person who has low anxiety, maybe wants to try a lot of new things, but you've been convinced about conservative ideas and conservative values and the meaning of religion, then you can live a conservative life. You can be a conservative, and vice versa. There are people who are conservative people who tend to feel more nervous about things or more strict, who are convinced of liberal ideas and then end up being more liberal. Life and people are broader than the categories we try to fit them into. So with that in mind, if you meet someone that has a personality that seems to fit more in one box or the other, that doesn't mean that they have to be that one thing. If you meet somebody who is more libertine and you think, well, they have to be liberal, that doesn't necessarily ring true. Number 5 is understand why liberals are skeptical of religion and groupishness so that you can really try and address their concerns. It's so important to recognize the differences between real religion and good community and the version of those things that are bad. In discussing the new atheist perception of religion, Jonathan Haidt writes, if religion is a virus or a parasite that exploits a set of cognitive byproducts for its benefit, not ours, then we ought to rid ourselves of it. But what's fascinating is that religion actually binds people together and has done so for thousands of years. Religion has encouraged people to be trustworthy and do the right thing in the eyes of God and in the eyes of each other. And only the groups whose gods encouraged cooperation survived. True happiness only comes from the feeling of being part of something greater. That's why you have leftists and wokeists treating that philosophy as a religion, because it feels like they're a part of something greater than themselves. When you don't have real religion, you make one up. And so for people who are participating in religion, it brings them joy, it brings them happiness, and it's super important to creating communities, creating good behavior among societies. It's really important. And being able to show why, from a societal perspective, religion is a good thing and not a bad thing is going to be a really good talking point with liberals. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory said, the meaning of a system cannot arise within the system. The meaning of our lives must come from outside of ourselves. Number 6 is that liberals don't understand conservative ideology the way that conservatives understand liberal ideology. The reason that liberals don't give conservatives the benefit of the doubt is because they truly do not understand the way that we think. They don't understand that conservatives are really trying to bring about more happiness in society by encouraging society to be a community built on values that are accurate about human nature and moral virtue, and which have rules that are the proper balance of humility and aspiration. And the reason liberals don't understand this is because they're weird. They view everyone as individuals. They do not see the communal binds that make people happier. And in doing so, in breaking people apart into individuals, they are making people lonelier and sadder because they don't see what the connections actually bring. They believe that personal freedom in every moment is the highest possible good. And they have forgot that in the pursuit of liberty in this sense, they have actually made people sadder and more alone and deprived them of the duties and obligations that give people meaning. So the thing that's super important as conservatives is to show them what conservatives really think and to show them how we think, instead of just random rules and puritanism that they think that we believe in because of social media and movies and pop culture. So you want to make sure that they give credence to your arguments in the first place, just because you are giving them reason to understand how you think and why you think that way. So those were my 6 ways to talk to liberals, to convince liberals, to have a conversation with liberals, and to really try and understand them and have them understand us. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments, have you read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind? I really enjoyed it. I thought that it had a lot to teach us, and I would love to hear your thoughts. If you haven't read the book, let me know in the comments which of these you would like to incorporate into your next conversation with someone who disagrees with you. I'd love to hear. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps out my channel when you do that. It really makes sure that my channel is growing, the Classic Crew is growing, and I really appreciate when you guys take the time to do that. Make sure to ring that notification bell so you get notified of all my new videos. You can follow me absolutely everywhere on all social media at Classically Abby. And if you'd like to donate and support my channel, feel free to head over to classicallyabby.locals.com and you'll get ad-free versions of these videos. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!